It's the alternative paper review.
Well, good morning, you sexy mother hubbards. It's time for an alternative paper review. Let's get it. First up to the Mail this morning, who unsurprisingly are covering the big story of yesterday and today that a failed asylum seeker, although third time lucky, meaning he applied twice, he was rejected twice, he's a sex offender. And then on the third time, he was like, actually, I forgot to mention, I'm a Christian, so I can't go back because they'll persecute me back in Afghanistan. So I guess I'm here now. Well, anyway, the big story is he threw acid into a young woman's face and it got onto her daughter also. He's now on the run, and we all like a good manhunt fugitive story, don't we? Do you remember when the guy escaped from prison for those 3 days? Similar vibe back then, I recall. Or like if there's a big royal story, it's like out goes the party politics, out goes the hysteria over Labour's £28 billion of green investment. And instead we all sit back and snack and wait for the inevitable police raid footage, don't we? Now, I suppose this is the moment where a lot of you might be thinking, oh, he's going to go all turbo lefty about this. He's going to defend this guy's right to claim asylum, you know, or suggest that it's a mental health issue. Maybe he's traumatised. He's been conditioned from years of living under the Taliban, who, let's face it, are not exactly celebrated for the way that they treat their women. But no, I think when this individual first arrived in the UK off the back of a lorry, reportedly, and then he committed those 2 sex offences, I think at that point you probably should have been jailed. Then we wouldn't even be having this conversation, would we? Because he'd be in the can, and maybe he'd be able to apply for asylum from within a prison. But I think where you've got a catalogue of sex offences, in that instance, you could make a credible case that this individual should go straight from the prison into some sort of detention facility while their asylum case is processed. I do have concerns, though, with the way that this story is being reported, right? Because there's a lot of comment bubbling around now saying, well, this will be the catalyst, this will be the straw that broke the camel's back, that shifts public opinion to being pro-Rwanda policy, pro the Bibi Stockholm. Like, nobody likes the idea of desperate refugees arriving in the UK, seeking refuge, and then them being bundled off and shipped off to Rwanda. But if we're talking sexual predators and abusers, and you had the choice of welcoming one of those guys into your village, into your street, or just quietly giving the nod to the Rwanda flight over there, like, yeah, it's a bit out of character, I know, but could you get rid of him? I think in that instance, I wonder how many of us would actually do the bad thing. I also think it's interesting how this is being viewed through a blame prism of asylum more generally, like, oh, well, this is what you get when you have an open door policy, etc., rather than the truth, which is this is what you get after 14 years of the Tories running the Home Office. Like, if we look at this story for what it is a violent assault visited on a woman and her daughter by a convicted sex offender who should have been in prison, who happens to be someone who's only in the UK because of the asylum processes. Now, each of those institutions are run by the Conservative Party and have been for over the last decade. The Home Office, the judiciary, the prison system, probations, asylum. I mean, it's precisely the sort of monumental, quasi-industrial failure that should result in the Prime Minister, or at least the Home Secretary, going, do you know what? Maybe I should probably resign over this. But rest assured, none of that will happen, because in case you needed reminding, when Conservatives talk about self-responsibility and you've got to take responsibility, what they actually mean is you've got to take responsibility. Not us. Oh, no. Taking responsibility, that's something for the plebs to do, yeah. Finally today, a story in the Times. Making pupils play rugby is a form of child abuse, one study claims. Now, this one sort of feeds into that same snowflake narrative I was on about. Was it yesterday? We were talking about, like, HR sessions and microaggression training in the civil service. There seems to be some sort of soft PR campaign going on in Times HQ that's trying to gently ferment the idea in your head that the up-and-coming generations are just too soft and we spend too much time pandering to their namby-pamby sensibilities. So before it was the microaggression training, now it's that rugby is a form of child abuse. Now look, I'm just going to put this straight out there. This may not shock you, right? I actually kind of agree with this. I think it is kind of abusive. Like, when I was at school, we did rugby in the winter. It was like November or December. It was just freezing cold. I'm not a big guy, right? I wasn't a big kid either. The last thing I was prepared to do physically, that I was built to do, was run out into a 1 degree field and get tackled and bowled over by kids like twice my size. You know, go to a state school comprehensive. Go outside in 1 degrees, get beaten the shit out of for an hour, come back with a mouthful of mud. What kind of vacuum of self-worth and Stockholm Syndrome do you need to have had to come out of that and go, I don't think I was abused, though? Like, I always looked at it like this, like, some boys are boisterous and physical, and other boys are dainty or arty or slight. And I feel like from about the age of 11, you know which camp you fall into, but for some reason, the schools make the boisterous kids do textiles and music, which they're not interested in, and they make the dainty, artsy, slight kids do the rugby. But if all either one of them comes away with is this idea like, oh, well, this is just as terrible as I thought it would be, or like, I suck at this, what are you actually teaching them? What are you sending them out into society with?